So I came up with this idea, pontoon karaoke. So basically it's a pretty simple setup to use like an app called Carafun or some other karaoke app.
I might steal some of your ideas just so we're clear. Anything you say here may be stolen from you.
We need a non-disclosure agreement.
I signed nothing.
Welcome to the Woman Angler and Adventurer podcast, inspiring real women with a passion for fishing and the outdoors to go get their adventure on. Now, here's your fearless host, Angie Scott.
Hello and welcome. It's still summer. There's still a year full of surprises, good and bad. Lots of exciting things going on, though, and some big announcements to come, so stay tuned. So there's a really fun fishing podcast that's been around since 2011 called Fish Nerds. Perhaps you've listened to it. It's hosted by Clay Groves, and Clay is out of New Hampshire, and it's a really entertaining show. He's a fellow pontoon angler and guide, so it's really fun connecting with Clay about that. They have various correspondents on the show and special segments. One of the correspondents is crappie hippie John King. John is a huge supporter of women in fishing and the Woman Angler and Adventurer podcast, so I was honored when he reached out and asked if I'd like to be a special guest on the Fish Nerds podcast. That was an opportunity I just couldn't pass up. So John has since sent me a selection of his glasswater angling lead-free fishing tackle crappie baits, and I can't wait to try those out here on Percy Priest Lake. Thank you, John. I will keep you posted. I had so much fun being on the Fish Nerds show that I wanted to share it with y'all here on the Woman Angler and Adventurer podcast feed. There were a couple segments I cut out for sake of time, which included a really funny Fish in the News segment, as well as a Captain versus Captain quiz between Clay and myself. So I'll put a link to the full episode in the show notes if you want to go check that out. And I highly recommend you go subscribe to the Fish Nerds podcast and add that to your podcast repertoire if you haven't already. All right, I hope you enjoy the special Fish Nerds edition of the Woman Angler and Adventurer podcast.
Whether you're fly fishing in a stream, getting those ankles wet, or deep in the ocean casting nets, Fish Nerds. Fish Nerds. Fish Nerds. It's a podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Fish Nerds, the show about fish, fishing, and eating fish. I'm Clay Groves, Chief Executive Fish Nerd, licensed fishing guide, and your best friend. Co-hosting with me tonight is the crappie hippie John King. Hello, John.
Hey, Clay. Hey, Angie. How's it going, everybody?
I haven't even said Angie's name yet. So, and our
get
special guest, our special guest tonight is Angie Scott, host of the Women Angler and Adventure podcast. We're going to get into that in a second. But today on the show, we're going to talk about her show. We're going to talk about the rapid rise in female angling, which we hope there's a rapid rise of. We're going to talk about pontoon boat fishing. John's got a surprise for us. And, of course, we have no idea. Something else might also happen. Angie Scott, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be on your show. I've been aware of your show for a number of years, so kudos to you for keeping it going for so long.
Oh, yeah. I don't know how to quit. So.
Clearly, he does not know how to quit or when to quit, but we're all real happy for that.
We jumped the shark in the first year, so I didn't even notice. I just kept going. All right, so I've been on your website doing a little tooling around and stuff, and it struck me one of the things I really like is that you've got this kind of core belief system that you kind of run your show with and you kind of live your life by, and I really liked it. And it was women deserve to be better represented in the fishing and outdoor industry. I'm going to check those off. I agree with that. We are better together. Check. I guess we as a women, is that what that means?
Right. Yeah. If we all stick together rather than fight against each other,
Well, I'm with you there too. Yep. If she can do it, you can do it. We should enjoy the outdoors 5 days and work 2. Check, 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 check. Always leave it better than you found it. Absolutely. America is beautiful. Let's restore it. We should restore what's been lost and improve what hasn't and respect the fish. Totally with you on all counts. So anyway, welcome.
Let's talk about how you got started, Angie.
Yeah, so originally I'm from Minnesota, so just really brief background on me. Grew up fishing up there, landed 10,000 lakes and all that. But I had a couple passions, and so I kind of had to decide which route I was going to take. Was I going to go into somehow in the outdoors, like maybe work for the DNR or something like that? Or was I going to go a totally different direction and follow my passion for music? And so ultimately I decided to go the music route. And so that brought me down to Nashville, Tennessee. There's some music business schools down here. And if you want to get your foot in the door in the music business, really highly competitive industry, it helps to go to a music business school, get a music business degree, do some internships, that sort of thing. So that's the path I took. And I got a job in the music industry down here in Nashville right after I graduated college. Did that for a few years, kind of part of my passion for the music industry was songwriting. And so I, over the years, would write songs off and on. And I discovered this thing called podcasts. And so I was like, is there such a thing as songwriting podcasts? And so I kind of was listening to this one, and they were quitting. They weren't going to continue the show. So somebody else reached out to me and said, "Hey, I'm going to start a songwriting podcast." I know we had communicated because we were both fans of this other show. And he said, I can't do it by myself. I need a co-host. Would you be interested? And I was like, man, that sounds really scary. I've never thought of myself as having a radio voice. Let's do it. That's kind of my attitude. Like, if something scares the crap out of me, you know what? I at least got to try it once and see. I had to do it under an assumed name because I didn't want to have any conflicts of interest with my day job.
Please tell me your assumed name.
So my middle name is Marie. So simple enough. I went by Marie. My last name at the time, my maiden name is Peralt. And so I just that's also a hard name to say. So I went with Marie Perry. It was actually called the Commercial Suicide Songwriting Podcast.
Oh my God.
I didn't come up with that. That was my co-host
It's a good name.
So we did that for a while. And again, that just got me really into the podcasting thing. Got to be too much for me at one point, just with the day job and also songwriting and all of that. And then I got into boating, which, we could talk about that as well. Pontoons, we'll talk about that later. But
yes.
But so fast forward a few years, I can kind of tell that my position at this company was going to be kind of phased out just with technology advances and things like that. And I started thinking, all right, and I've done it for a long time now. It was about 15, 16 years at that point. I'm like, what could I do? What am I passionate about? At that point, it's being out on the water, it's fishing. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to start a podcast about that and see if maybe I can build that up into something. And then when this position goes away, I'll already have something to fall back on. So didn't quite work out that way. As you know, you don't really make bank in podcasting, at least.
People are shocked that you don't make a living podcasting.
And so my position did go away as I predicted, but I had a little bit of time to focus and build. And so now I've also started a charter business with my pontoon. So I have a deal. That's one thing that came out of the podcast is I have a demo deal with my local dealer here in outside of Nashville, Anderson Marine, and Quest Pontoons, who I've had a good relationship with for a few years. They're who I bought my first pontoon with and designed it and everything. And so they're giving me a demo pontoon to take people out on, which is actually a tri-toon.
Damn it! Like I bought a stupid boat. I didn't even think to ask. Hey, can I have a boat?
Yeah. So I get to use it for the year and then show it off and then
give it back.
Hopefully do it again the next year. So,
but you don't have to do the maintenance. You don't have to store it. Oh my God!
I keep it. I do have a slip for it here at the marina, and I keep it up on a lift, so it will be up out of the water. But so that's worked out really well. And then just through kind of doing stuff with the podcast at the Nashville Boat Show this past January, I ran into Freedom Boat Club. And so over the years, I have got my captain's license because I want to do charters the right way and be properly insured and all of that. So I got my captain's license, and they're looking for licensed captains to do their new member trainings. And then with COVID and the boat getting delayed due to manufacturing being shut down, I've kind of been able to fill up all this time with doing new member trainings for Freedom Boat Club. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So now, see, interestingly, is in New Hampshire to run a charter service in freshwater inland waters, you don't need a captain's license. You need a commercial operator license.
Okay.
Which is, I think, a less intense program than it's a U.S. Coast Guard captain's license you're talking about.
Yeah.
So it's less intense than that, but you still have to have a commercial license and be insured. So like I'm a commercial operator, licensed and insured, legal to have my business.
Right.
But I would love to get my captain's license. That's kind of like, because I don't let people call me captain because I haven't earned that. It's weird to be called captain when you haven't done.
And it's funny. That's one thing I found. So as part of being the kind of the head captain at Freedom Boat Club Nashville, I'm trying to find other captains to help share the load. So there's not a lot in our area. I found one guy I knew through the Coast Guard Auxiliary. I volunteered for them for a couple years. And so I brought him on, and he's been awesome. But when I've been kind of researching, I find out, I'm Googling and trying to find other guides and stuff in the area that advertise themselves as captains. I'm finding out they're not actually licensed captains.
Yeah, very few in inland waters are licensed captains. They are sometimes legal to do the business, but
they just have the nickname captain, Captain, Stumpy Smith.
Well, maybe they spell it
really a real captain though, right?
Maybe it's like CAPN.
Yeah, we got a guy on our dock. Everybody calls him Captain Paul, but he doesn't have his captain's license.
Yeah, I always feel like if you're going to have the title, you got to earn the title. You can't just make it up. Like I'm chief executive fish nerd. We made that up. I didn't earn it. So I've earned it now, 7 years in, but I didn't start off with it. Actually, Dave Kellen, my original founder, started off with that, and I was chief. What did he call me? It was chief promotion officer, something like that. I don't know. Some made up crap. It's all made up. John, what's up?
Oh, I don't know. I just, that was awesome. I just, we're real big on just taking the plunge. Usually starts with, anything I'm afraid of. It starts out with, here, hold my beer.
Let's talk about running a fishing charter on a pontoon boat. What a terrible idea. Who does this?
I know. It's like, I don't understand why you wouldn't fish from a pontoon boat, honestly, because it's just such a nice, stable platform. You've got so much room. So you can bring families out. You're not all cramped in and getting tangled up in each other's lines. You've got that bimini for shade. So if it's a really hot day, you're not just out there in the sweltering heat. They've got trolling motors. So it's like, I don't understand why you wouldn't.
It really is easy. Let's roll back to that charter service. So you started out this fishing charter service when?
So really last year I kind of started just dabbling in it, and quite honestly, I do more recreational charters, just taking people out on the lake and hanging out than I actually do fishing.
Which is easier.
It's easier. It's less pressure. Yeah. So really I just kind of did it here and there to get my feet wet last year.
So let's you're in Tennessee, right?
Yep.
All right. So tell me, in Tennessee, what's required to be a fishing charter captain besides the captain's license? We know that already. You got to have. What is required? Is that required even?
So not on all the bodies of water. So only if it's a navigable body of water. Like we've got Old Hickory, just north of Nashville, that's on the Cumberland River. And since on the Cumberland River you can get to the Mississippi, you can basically do the Great Loop through the Cumberland River. You have to have your captain's license to do charters on that lake. I'm sure there's a lot of people that try to get away with it without.
Sure. So captain's license, and then to be a guide, are you required to have special licensing for that?
You should have a guide license.
Should or have to have?
Have to have.
Well, okay, so it's not like Kansas where you just write "I'm a guide" and Sharpie on your shirt, and bam, you're a guide. No, that's great.
So what's the process to get the license in Tennessee?
So it's actually, from what I understand, it's fairly new, so that you haven't in the past.
So you don't have it?
I don't have mine right now. No,
okay.
And I've
Breaking
not
the
been.
law.
Well, I've not been doing any charters because my boat just got delivered last week, so I'm actually picking up on Saturday. So
Nice.
once before I do any actual fishing guide charters, I'll have to get that, and I think it's just an application and then a small monetary fee.
That sounds
you pay.
delightful. New Hampshire and Maine are the two hardest states in the country to get your guide permits in.
Really?
And both states require a 100-question written test and an oral board in front of like these really macho, big, tough fishing game officers. And they run you through. You have to be expert map and compass. You have to be an expert at rescue, like search and rescue in the mountains, even if you're boating. And it's just incredibly difficult. So I'm a little jealous of states where it's less hoops to jump through. There's only 80 guides in the whole state of New Hampshire because most people fail the test and just say, screw it, I'm not going to bother with it.
Wow.
So,
Well, that's good for you then, right?
maybe.
But at least you get to, now, do they send you the nifty shirt and patch, or do you got to create your own, Clay?
The patches I have to buy, but you can only buy them if you've got your guide license, and they're only $1 a piece. They're cheap.
Oh.
So, a really funny kind of a side story. I've been spending forever trying to get it on my hat. See, I got my license there on my hat, and I gave it to my daughter. I'm like, I'm trying to sew this guide patch on my hat, and she looks at it and she goes, "I'll be right back." And she grabs an iron, and they're iron-on patches.
A couple of things. When you say you store your boat at the slip at the lake, and then you're over there in the other slip, right? Because you live on a houseboat.
Yeah, so I've got a 66-foot houseboat.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Yes, huge.
I stay out there all the time. I do have a house, but I love staying on the houseboat as much as possible. I just love being on the water. So actually I've got another houseboat in between, and then I've got my pontoons. So I've got the big one and a lift for the big one, and then my little one is next to it. So pretty convenient.
You are living the dream.
Perfect.
That's the name of my houseboat. Living
Living the dream?
Well, appropriate. Okay, so getting back to the charters, we're kind of dancing around the cool stuff. Karaoke charters. So does your boat have hookups for the lights and the mics and the dance floor and the whole setup like that?
So I'm in Nashville, Tennessee, and it's like the number one. It's like the bachelorette capital of the world.
I'm moving.
Bachelorette party, and so I'm like, what's going to draw those kind of people that just want to go out on the lake and have a good time and have a sober skipper to take them out, and they don't have to worry about renting a pontoon, having somebody to drive it, and all that. So I came up with this idea. Pontoon karaoke. So basically it's a pretty simple setup. So you use like an app called Carafun or some other karaoke app.
I might steal some of your ideas just so we're clear. Anything you say here may be stolen from you.
We need a non-disclosure agreement.
I signed nothing. Well, you're in a great niche there. I do the same thing that you're doing. I do fishing, but actually about last summer, about half my clients just want boat rides.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had a few clients, actually one specifically, who was about to buy a boat. Rich guy, retired, was about to buy a boat. He met me and thought, why buy a boat? You're my boat. And now I take him out every 2 weeks. He prepaid for the entire 8 cruises, already prepaid in advance for all his dates, and it's just terrific. So it's on money. Do you have a grill on your boats?
I have one on the little one, so I could take that mount off and put it mounted on the bigger one if I wanted to. Kind of a little since it's a demo boat, I don't really want to mess with that too much. Yeah. But one tricky thing you asked about requirements. So this particular lake, it's not navigable. It's managed by the Corps of Engineers. So you do have to, I have to have a sublease agreement with them in order to do business on this lake. So again, I think there's a lot of people out here that get away with it with not having that. So I actually have to give the Corps of Engineers 4%.
Yeah, that's how a national forest in New Hampshire is. If you want a guide in national forest, you pay them. I think it's 7%.
Okay.
Yeah,
and then
but it's all self-report. You have to just tell them what you made, and you pay them yourself.
Right.
No
yeah.
checking.
Right.
So-
And then since I've got my boat moored at this marina, I also have to pay I have a sublease agreement with the marina to do business with a boat here. So I have to pay them 10%. So that's a pretty big chunk that
It's
goes
like-
away.
Yeah, it's almost 15% of
Yeah.
your money before you even get on the water.
Exactly. Yeah.
Ouch.
So that's something to consider. So, I might not do a ton this year, but I've got the Freedom Boat Club thing to keep me afloat as well. So
Yeah. I just applied for a state grant for monies lost because of COVID-19 because I am uncomfortable with guiding during this pandemic. Because, as you know, guiding, you touch people's hands a lot, right?
right.
You go close to them. But on a boat ride, I can sit in my captain's seat and handle it. But I'm concerned about about guiding with COVID. How do you handle this? How are you handling COVID-19?
Well, so at first, everybody was a little bit more cautious, especially when we first opened up. So we wore masks and even out on the boat. We're doing our trainings on a giant pontoon boat, so we're pretty distanced anyways, and I'm just kind of talking through commands. So I kind of got to the point where I was asking the customer or the member, "Are you comfortable? Do you want to wear a mask? If you do, I'll wear one." And no, actually, I didn't have anyone that said, let's wear masks."
Yeah.
So. And you're outside, I don't know.
It's a lower risk, much lower risk outside than inside. And they say the virus is time spent with it inside is the most dangerous. What I do is I wear a buff around my neck. And if I have to get near someone, for whatever reason, I just pull it up for a second, get near them, drop it down, back to my seat
Yeah.
out of the way. So
The
just try to
biggest
be as
problem.
respectful as I can. Yeah.
The biggest problem I had the first few trainings we did and we were wearing the masks was my sunglasses fogging up and I couldn't see. I'm like, what's more dangerous, not being able to see while you're driving a boat or I don't know.
That depends on how old you are. So how'd you mitigate the fog? Did you put like shaving cream in them and wash them out, or how do you spit in them?
I'd just kind of have to move them away from
Yeah.
my face and kind of let them air out a little bit,
Yeah, a lot of little tricks there. So
Yeah, but it's not been too bad. And the other thing, we do have a classroom training that we take people through. So what I did is I put together a PowerPoint for that, and we were doing them via Zoom,
better.
which works so well that we're continuing to do that. And now I'm just designing it into an online course, so that's going to save me several hours a week.
From billion-dollar ad budgets and arena naming rights to tens of thousands of retail locations, Big Wireless providers spend big to appear like they're your only option. How do they afford it all? That big bill you get at the end of every month. Mint Mobile had a different idea. Instead of brick and mortar overhead, Mint Mobile is online only. What does that mean for you? A whole lot of savings, because wireless plans from Mint Mobile start at just $15 a month. That's unlimited talk, text, and data for just $15 a month. You'll save enough that you can get a brand new rod and reel for the upcoming season. For anyone who just hates their phone bill, Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for just $15 a month. All plans come with unlimited talk, text, and high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan, and you can even keep your same phone number along with all of your existing contacts. By going online only and eliminating traditional costs of retail, Mint Mobile passes significant savings on to you. Switch to Mint Mobile and get premium wireless service starting at just $15 a month. To get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month and get the plan shipped to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/waypoint. That's mintmobile.com/waypoint. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/waypoint.
So through Airbnb's app, you can be an excursion, right? But if you have a boat and you want to be an excursion, even though I'm legal to operate in New Hampshire, Airbnb's excursion on their app will not accept my boating business unless I have a captain's license.
Yep.
So I'm eliminated from that pot of money because I don't have that license. So that's my next kind of like get that paper.
That's what I did. That's the only way I did a few charters last year was through Airbnb.
So you know.
But they take 20%.
Just charge more, I guess.
Yeah, but and the problem with Airbnb, that I ran into was it's per person. You can't set it up to be like, okay, you can't set it up to be like it's $600 for a full day, up to so many people. It has to be. So if one person books for like whatever, I have a 4-hour charter. If one person books for $100, I still got to go out for a 4-hour charter just for that one person. You can't just tell me
you sold out. Sorry. Gross.
Yeah. So that's the problem I had with working there.
And did you have that? Did you have a one-person charter?
I never did. And that would probably be rare, you know.
Yeah, because I won't step on my boat for less than $200.
And so that's where I was at too. So
unless John King's on the boat, then I'll go for nothing.
Well, I just want to roll back to make sure myself and the audience is we're talking about Freedom Boat Club, and this is a training course on how to become a pontoon boat operator.
Any kind of boat. So
kind of boat.
Freedom Boat Club, we've got wake surf boats, ski boats, deck boats, all kinds of stuff. So
okay, now is this just for if you want to go pro, or is this something that people just take so they know what they're doing?
Yeah, we want everybody to be as safe as possible, so we make sure every member goes through this training before they can start reserving boats.
Well, it just sounds like such a fantastic idea because it's kind of like the parking lot thing. People get in parking lots and no stop sign, no speed limit sign. I guess I can do what I want. Same with boats. It's like, wow, I'm in a boat. I can, I can act like a jackass, and it's just, fine with everybody. And it's like, no, it's not.
And especially now, because after COVID, I don't know if it's the same thing up there, but on the weekends, it's a zoo out on the water here.
Well, both the lakes you're talking about, on Old Hickory and
Percy Priest,
they're right there by Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
So that's got to get busy quick. Yeah, I could imagine.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, besides the fact that you've got like a billion tourists there, Nashville's a fairly large city in and of itself. So,
oh yeah,
yeah.
The marinas have these big rental pontoons that are built like tanks, and they got the upper deck and the slide, and you'll see just a fleet of them leaving the marina in the morning on a Saturday morning, and it's just like full of people. Whatever the limit is, they're full to the limit of all those people heading out just to have a good time out on the water for the day. So it's crazy.
It sounds crazy. And Percy Priest, I've heard of that. It's pretty good bass lake, isn't it? Haven't they had some serious tournaments there and so on?
They have. Actually, the second ever Bassmaster Classic was on Percy Priest right after it got built. So that was kind of interesting. The way they did it back then, it was like a big secret. So the anglers didn't even know where they were going until they got there. And so nobody knew. And then they already had a fleet of boats that were all the same, had all the same equipment on them that they had to use. And so I saw a video that was actually on Percy Priest out of my marina. So that was kind of neat to see way back then. But so there are a lot of tournaments out here, almost daily. And so there's a lot of pressure. And so that it's kind of a hard lake to fish because there's just so much going on all the time.
Well, I think people should know too that like when you're describing a big lake, you're describing a 42-mile long lake. Like I don't know if where you are, where most people listeners are, I don't know lakes that big. Like 42 miles is monster.
And it's 42 miles, but it's also a river. So there's certain parts you can't really get to because it gets so shallow. The Stones River is what feeds it, and it's not a very big river.
And it's a man-made lake through damming it, right? So
exactly. Yeah.
River.
Yeah.
And you don't have to listen to him. He's always sneaking that in on us, especially me out here in Kansas. We're all artificial reservoirs. Clay just always got to get that in there. That lake you fish on, John, it's a fake lake, isn't it? It hasn't been there since time immemorial, like our lakes here in New Hampshire that are so.
We have glacial, beautiful lakes. I'm sorry.
He's justifiably proud. They are spectacular.
So, but in Percy Priest Lake, fish listed on the website for the visitors information centers, striped bass. You have landlocked striped bass, which I
My
would love
favorite.
to go catch. I love them. Largemouth, smallmouth, white bass, which is a temperate bass like a striper. John loves those. Cherokee bass, which I've never heard of. What's a Cherokee bass?
I actually don't know. I've not. If I've caught a Cherokee bass, I didn't know it was a Cherokee bass. I guess it's just a different strain. You know, like you got your Florida strain, so maybe Cherokee strain. Unfortunately, I'm not educated on that.
No, actually, Cherokee bass is in the temperate bass family, like a white bass. So it's
okay.
it is not a sunfish like a largemouth bass. So then you have sunfish, catfish, crappie, bluegill, trout. What's your favorite?
So if I had my druthers, I would target striper just because they're the hardest fighting, meanest fish in this lake.
Are you trolling or are you casting?
So I've done it both ways. So trolling would be my preference. The problem is if you want to really have success, you need to catch your own shad. So cast net, catch your shad. There's only a couple places on this lake where you can really get into some good shad. So you almost need to catch it somewhere else. You can't buy them in the bait stores.
Oh no.
And then you got to keep them alive. So that's the next big challenge.
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
So then you got to have a nice round aerated bait tank, that they're not going to be running their noses in the corners and all that. Plus it gets really hot. So you got to make sure they're the right temperature so they don't get too hot and die. Yeah. So there's just and then the guide I took out, he had downriggers, and the whole deal. So it's a lot more complicated. So now I fished them just in certain times of year, like coming into the spring here, you would get just these frenzies of striper and hybrids, really mostly, up on the surface, just going crazy. So you look for the birds, and then you run over there really quick, and you start just throwing spoons or whatever, and you're just catching, but they're not going to be big, typically they're just kind of the smaller size, but they still fight really hard, and that's fun when you can get into a good sized school of those.
It's crazy fun. It's crazy fun. I only have the white bass equivalent to talk about, but yeah, that is crazy fun. I want to jump back to the shad thing because Clay had a fellow on the show or was in Fish in the News. I had a little robot doohickey that you stuck down inside the bait.
Oh yeah,
Zombait.
The Zombait, that's it. Yeah, I wonder if Zombait would help eliminate this need for these fresh live shad, because I'm telling you, it's like Jeff Donaldson says, you look at a shad wrong and it's just going to go, So.
Well, Angie, you nailed it talking about the round tanks. Shad have to swim in circles or they die. Right. And so a square tank kills shad.
Clay drew that circle on the foredeck on his pontoon boat, and he tells me to stay inside that circle. And now I know why. So I don't end up nosed in the corner and banging my head on something.
I got to keep you safe, John.
You're a prince, man. I appreciate it. I do. Kansas has great fishing for nothing, mediocre fishing for most things, and it kind of goes down from there. So I'm always proud to be a fisher here because it's challenging.
All right. So I want to talk about women and fishing. I was doing a little bit of reading, and right now, according to Let's Go Fishing, which is the big industry standard website, 67% of anglers are male and 33% are female, but the females represent the largest growing segment of fishers. In your podcast, that's your target audience, right?
Yeah, the Woman Angler and Adventure podcast. So we've done a lot of work with RBFF, Recreational Boating and Fishing Foundation. They've got a program called Women Making Waves, where they're really trying to get, more of a 50-50 kind of balance as far as men and women in the fishing industry. And the problem is, so women are, more women than ever are buying fishing licenses, but the problem becomes they're not retaining them, so they're not buying them again the next year at such a good rate. So the biggest problem that they've discovered is that women feel like they're not being represented in the fishing industry. So they don't see themselves in the catalogs and things like that. And so they're like, I don't really belong here or whatever. So that's one of the things I wanted to to help with my podcast. So what I'm doing is featuring women who are getting out there doing awesome things, not even necessarily professionally, just if they're passionate about the sport and they want to share about it on the show, and then hopefully inspire other women who hear that and they're like, you know what, if she can do it, I can do it, like you mentioned earlier. And that's just been kind of the goal of the show. So I've had a large variety of guests on. I've even had someone from the Recreational Boating and Fishing Foundation talk about that whole Women Making Waves initiative. I've had some famous people on, which has been really fun, like with my tie-in with the music industry. I had Terry Clark, country music singer from Canada. I actually interviewed her backstage at the Grand Ole Opry one night to talk about her passion for fishing.
Isn't that the fun thing about podcasting? You got to go backstage Grand Ole Opry. Like, same thing happened to me. I got to go to the Boston Symphony and go backstage and interview an opera singer about fishing.
Nice.
I got to go to
Olathe.
Olathe. All right, I'm sorry. Go on.
But the funnest thing about it is, like, you just never know who fishes, and all kinds of people are doing it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and then another one I just locked in, so hopefully it happens, but Brittany Howard, lead singer from Alabama Shakes.
Nice. Yes.
She's big into fly fishing, and so we're supposed to do an interview with her here in the next week, so that's going to be awesome.
Well, there you go. So congratulations, by the way. That's amazing that you're reaching that many people and getting people on. And these female artists are going to be excited about it because you are in a niche that no one else is really digging in on.
Right.
I've been for years. I have 2 daughters, and I was taught to fish by my stepmother, taught to fillet fish by my stepmother. And so for me, it's not strange or odd for women to fish. In my world, that's the norm.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter Zoe, my oldest, is my co-captain on the boat. When we go on fishing charters, I don't touch bait. I don't tie knots. I don't unhook fish. Whether I'm on the ice or on the boat, she just does all the work.
Nice.
And to her, that's the normal thing it's not strange for her to be a girl and do that. She did tell me, though, because she is aware of her world. She said, Dad, when I'm 18, I'm getting my guide license, and I'm going to be a fly fishing guide, and I'm going to make a ton of money. And she's not wrong. She goes, also, I'm going to be competent. So
yeah, she is amazing.
Well, and so, there are those women out there that I've heard of women that said, I learned to fish from my grandmother and things like that. But when you do look at the industry, professional bass fishing, for instance, we don't have any women that fish the Bassmaster Classic,
Old boys club, that one.
Yeah. And, there's a couple women out there making a serious go at it, which is awesome. And I hope they succeed. But one of the ladies we had on the show not too long ago, her name's Anastasia Patterson, and she's trying to get into the professional scene. And one of the stories she told on the show was, she just had, I think it was when she was still in high school, but somebody just randomly said, oh, you'll never be able to make it in professional fishing because you're a woman or whatever.
Really?
And that really kind of sat with her,
well, yeah.
Even though he wasn't like a consequential person in her life, but just that comment,
Well, it is. And these are subtle aggressions, really. They really add up over time. The strange thing for me with it is, I can get it like, football, basketball, some sports where men are just physically, just naturally bigger than women. I can see why you might separate. Mm-hmm. Bass fishing or fishing, the fish don't know who's holding the fishing rod. It doesn't. In fact, in my experience, women are better anglers than men because they pay attention. They got better. There's something else about, like, anyone I fish with always fishes better than I do. They're just more in touch with the world around them somehow. So the fact that, like, women aren't in these industries is bizarre because there's nothing better about a man in this. There's no stronger. It doesn't matter how strong you are.
I've heard it described, fishing, especially like in high school, so high school fishing starting to take off because you don't have to have this physical build, to participate in fishing like you might football or basketball. So I've heard it described as the great equalizer.
Should be.
But I think where the issue comes in, and I've heard it time and time again, we've had the president from the LBAA, the Ladies Bass Anglers Association, on the show, that they do a few tournaments a year. That's kind of the ladies' professional bass, fishing level. But the issue is, so women having children, they can't really just leave the home and travel. And, it's a lot of work being away from home. These anglers that fish the classic, they're gone a lot. They're practicing. It's a huge time. It's a lifestyle, really. And so if you want to have a family, it makes it a lot more challenging if you're a woman to be able to just leave the home and go do that, I guess. So that's kind of the theme I've heard a lot.
Well, that's interesting. That's interesting. Everybody's going to have their limitations, I suppose. I mean, everybody wants to fish more than they can get out and do just because they got to earn a real living somewhere. Mm-hmm. But I want to jump back to Anastasia real quick because this is what really got me just completely stoked about your podcast, because you just have these amazing people on. And I was actually I'd been following Anna on Ice on Instagram for quite a while. And so I'd seen she'd been on your show, and part of my research is I went and listened to this and I got hooked. I had to. But Anastasia is African-American, correct?
Right. Yes.
And her mom, she's out of South Carolina, I do believe. Florida?
North Carolina or South Carolina.
Okay, one of the Carolina.
Yeah.
And her mom is the sheriff in the town. So she comes from that sort of strong female model. You have on so many great ladies that have had some person try to throw a stumbling block in their path and rise above. Anyway, as soon as I got done listening, I started following Anastasia, because when I first joined Fish Nerds as a correspondent, Clay's like, we're all about diversity. And frankly, I'm all for it, because there are so many groups that are underrepresented. Everybody wants to interview the pro bass guy. Everybody wants to interview the YouTuber, and they all tend to be men. I just don't want to go through the please, oh, please, to get somebody on the show when I can get somebody that's, super stoked, super excited, and just breaking new ground. It just really, really is awesome. So,
yeah.
I don't have any more questions about the podcast, but people can find what's your website?
So really easy, just thewomanangler.com is the website. Mm-hmm. And then like Facebook is @thewomanangler, same thing on Instagram. And then the cool thing, we've got a Facebook group. And that's, I think, really special, because that's a private group. People can ask to join, and then you can communicate with other people that listen to the show. And it's kind of more of a private setting. So if you have a question that you might be embarrassed to ask or whatever, people seem to be a little bit more comfortable in that community.
Yeah, Facebook groups we have Fish Nerds have like 14,000 on our page. We have a group with almost 1,000 in it, and the 1,000 in the group is where the audience engagement is. That's where people build the community, and it's pretty great. So congratulations. It's so much fun. Angie, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
So that's it. You've listened to a bunch of fish nerds when you should have been fishing.
So until next time, follow the code of the Fish Nerds.
Spawn early and often.
Never trust a free lunch with strings attached.
And swim against the current every chance you get.
You did it, Angie. You made a podcast. Congratulations.
Whether you're fly fishing in a stream, getting those ankles wet, or deep in the ocean casting nets, Fish Nerds. Fish Nerds. Fish Nerds. It's a podcast. Just for the halibut. Fried in a basket or broiled in a pan. Eat it raw like you're in Siam. Fish Nerds. Fish Nerds. Fish Nerds. It's a podcast.